There is a moment that every generation of football fans experiences exactly once. A moment where a player arrives on the scene who is so different, so explosive, and so completely unlike anything that came before him that the sport itself seems to shift on its axis to accommodate what they are doing. We saw it with Maradona in Naples, we saw it with Ronaldinho at Barcelona, and right now, in the summer of 2026, as the world's greatest footballers descend on North America for the biggest World Cup in history, we are watching it happen again with a 25-year-old Brazilian from the streets of São Gonçalves, whose dancing feet and fearless smile have turned him into the most talked about, most debated, and most electrifying footballer on the planet. His name is Vinicius Jr., and here at Goalline Stories, where we exist to find the stories that go far deeper than the scorelines, we want you to subscribe if you haven't already, because what this young man has done, not just on the football pitch, but off it, in boardrooms, in courtrooms, and in the conscience of the entire sport, is one of the most extraordinary and most important stories that football has produced in a generation, and it is a story that is still being written right now on the biggest stage in the world. Vinicius Jr. was born on July 12, 2000, in São Gonçalves, a municipality on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro. That is not the Brazil of postcards and carnival parades, but the Brazil that most Brazilians actually know, a place of narrow streets, relentless heat, and a kind of poverty that shapes a person in ways that never fully leave them, no matter how far they travel or how high they climb. Football in communities like São Gonçalves is not a hobby or a career aspiration. It is the single most viable path out, the one door that opens if you are talented enough and hungry enough and fortunate enough to be spotted by the right person at the right moment. And from the earliest age, it was absolutely clear that Vinicius Jr. was all three of those things simultaneously. He was spotted by Flamengo, one of the most famous and most passionately supported clubs in South America, at the age of just 7 years old, and from that moment forward, his development was so rapid and so consistently extraordinary that by the time he was 16, the biggest clubs in European football were already in a quiet but increasingly urgent competition to secure his future. Real Madrid won that competition in 2017, paying what was at the time a staggering fee for a teenager who had not yet played a single professional match. And the football world looked at that decision with a mixture of excitement and skepticism that would take several years and several painful chapters to fully resolve. The early years at Real Madrid were not easy, and anyone who tells you that Vinicius Jr. arrived in Madrid and immediately conquered Europe is not telling you the full story, because the full story is far more interesting and far more human than that. He was 17 years old, thousands of miles from home, playing in the most demanding and most scrutinized football league in the world. And the criticism that came his way in those first 2 seasons was relentless and at times genuinely cruel. Pundits questioned his decision-making, his finishing, his consistency, and whether Real Madrid had made a catastrophic mistake investing so heavily in a teenager whose talent was undeniable, but whose end product was, at that stage, maddeningly unreliable. There were matches where he would beat 4 defenders with his extraordinary dribbling ability and then produce a final ball so wayward that the Spanish media would dedicate entire segments to dissecting what had gone wrong. And there were moments where you could see the frustration on his face and wonder whether the weight of expectation was going to crush him before he ever had the chance to fulfill what everyone who watched him in training knew was an almost supernatural potential. But here is what those critics consistently underestimated. The thing that separates Vinicius Jr. from the hundreds of talented teenagers who arrive at big clubs every year and disappear quietly into obscurity. And that is a determination so fierce and so deeply rooted in where he came from that no amount of public criticism was ever going to break it. The transformation began in the 2021 to 2022 season, and it was so dramatic and so complete that it left even his harshest critics struggling to find the words to describe what they were witnessing. Vinicius Jr. did not just improve. He became, almost overnight, the most feared and most exciting attacking player in European football, a player whose combination of blistering pace, instinctive dribbling, and a newly discovered clinical finishing ability made him virtually impossible to contain when he was operating at his best. He scored the winning goal in the Champions League final against Liverpool at the Stade de France in Paris, a moment that announced him to the world not as a promising teenager, but as a match winner at the very highest level. And from that moment forward, the trajectory of his career was unmistakably clear. But it was also around this time that something else began to happen. Something that went far beyond football and that would ultimately define Vinicius Jr.'s legacy in a way that no goal or trophy ever could. In stadiums across Spain and increasingly across Europe, Vinicius Jr. was becoming the target of racist abuse on a scale and with a frequency that was so shocking and so persistent that it could no longer be dismissed as isolated incidents or the behavior of a handful of bad actors. It was a systematic and deeply revealing problem that exposed the ugly reality lurking beneath the glamorous surface of the world's most watched sport, and Vinicius Jr. was not prepared to stay silent about it.
Cuando le ha sacado la tarjeta roja, todo el estadio le gritaba mono, mono, mono. Nunca he pensado de quitar a un jugador para que es insultado. La Liga Española tiene un problema, que no es Vinicius. Vinicius es la víctima de un problema muy grave.
What made Vinicius Jr.'s response to the racism he faced so remarkable and so historically significant was not just that he spoke out. Plenty of footballers before him had spoken out about racism and been quietly ignored. But the way he spoke out, with a directness and a fury and a refusal to be placated by empty gestures that forced the football world to confront something it had been successfully avoiding for decades. When he was subjected to monkey chants at Valencia in May 2023, in a moment that was captured on camera and broadcast to millions of people around the world, he did not accept the standard response of polite condemnation followed by minimal consequences. He went to the microphone and told the world, in language that was impossible to misunderstand, that Spanish football had a racism problem, that the authorities were not doing enough to address it, and that he was not going to stop talking about it until something genuinely changed. The response from the football establishment was initially defensive and occasionally infuriating. There were figures within Spanish football who suggested that Vinicius Jr. was exaggerating, or that he was somehow responsible for the hostility he faced. A response so tone-deaf and so revealing of the institutional attitudes that had allowed the problem to fester for so long that it generated a wave of international outrage that ultimately made it impossible for anyone in a position of authority to continue looking the other way. Brazil's government got involved, FIFA got involved, and suddenly a conversation that football had been successfully avoiding for years was happening everywhere at once, whether the sport wanted it to or not. The story of Vinicius Jr. in 2026 is not just the story of a footballer who overcame racism. It is the story of a young man from the streets of São Gonçalves who arrived at the biggest stage in world football, carrying every disadvantage that a person can carry, and who responded to every obstacle, every critic, and every act of hatred, not by shrinking or retreating, but by becoming more of himself, more expressive, more joyful, and more devastatingly effective on a football pitch than anyone had any right to expect. The dancing celebrations that became his trademark, the ones that some opponents and some commentators found provocative and others found irresistible, were never really about provocation at all. They were about a boy from a poor community in Brazil who had been told in 1,000 different ways that he did not belong at the top of the game, responding to every goal with the purest and most defiant expression of joy that he knew how to produce, which happened to be the same dancing he had grown up with in São Gonçalves. The same dancing his community had always used to celebrate everything that was good and everything that was worth fighting for. By the time the 2026 World Cup began in North America, Vinicius Jr. had already won 2 Champions League titles, a La Liga title, and had been recognized as one of the 2 or 3 best players on the planet. But what he was carrying into this tournament felt bigger than any of those individual achievements, because he was carrying the hopes of a Brazil team that had not won a World Cup since 2002, the expectations of a nation of 200 million people who had been waiting for their next footballing messiah, and the symbolic weight of every young black footballer in the world who had ever been told that their joy, their style, and their identity were somehow incompatible with the highest levels of the sport. Whether Brazil win this World Cup or not, whether Vinicius Jr. lifts that trophy or goes home with nothing but memories and regrets, his impact on football is already permanent and already profound. He has changed the conversation, changed the culture, and changed what it means to be a footballer in the modern world in ways that will outlast any trophy and any statistic. Here at Goalline Stories, this is exactly the kind of story we exist to tell. The ones that go beyond the goals and the glory to find the moments where sport becomes something genuinely larger than itself. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel right now because we publish new documentaries every single week. And if you share this video with one person who loves football, you are helping us build a community that truly understands what the beautiful game is really about. This has been Goalline Stories, and we will see you in the next chapter.